What is up, everyone? It is Cage Unlimited here. I am back with another episode of Spill the Tearal, a JRPG podcast. And I realized when recording last episode that I really need a tagline for this podcast, because last week I literally said, this is Spill the Tearal, a JRPG podcast, a podcast where I talk about JRPGs, which is very redundant and weird. So I'm going to try to come up with some kind of tagline I can kind of refer to after seeing the title. So that kind of explains the podcast. I think that's like a thing you kind of need for a podcast, so people who just join know what it's about. But so right now it's just a JRPG podcast, just so you know that it's about JRPGs. But I'll come up with a more succinct tagline that kind of encompasses that I talk about, like when I'm playing, the news, releases, and things like that. But yeah, that's just something I noticed when editing last week's episode. And speaking of last week's episode, I'm really glad with how it did. For some reason, actually not some reason, I kind of know why, last week's episode popped off relatively compared to the other stuff I'm doing, especially because, like I mentioned before, this podcast is JRPG in general. Is not like specifically Kingdom Hearts, which is what this channel is made off of. So like I expect these videos to do a lot worse and like slowly build up. But the second episode of Spill the Tearal did pretty good, and I'm pretty sure it's because of Ys 10. Pretty much I had a Ys 10 reaction during that episode, and I noticed in terms of the retention graph of that episode, the section of JRPG news is where it spiked. I don't know if it's specifically Ys 10 technically, because it could have been for any news, but I would guess it's that, because I believe the episode released the same day that game was announced, which was pretty good timing on my part. And funnily enough, we have another news story for today where there was a release literally maybe like 2 hours before I'm recording this. So I'll be talking about that too, and maybe that'll spike this episode too, I'm not sure. But yeah, that I just want to talk about how last episode did pretty good, and hopefully we can kind of keep that steam and make this podcast be a bigger thing. And another thing I want to bring up about last episode, I'm very sorry about it losing focus for like a long time during the episode. I think it was like maybe at least a quarter or a third of the episode where the focus was off. Just to get into the nitty gritty, the way like this lens works is I have to press my face on the screen for it to keep focus on me. If I don't, it'll just keep fucking searching around for a focus point. And I do that at the start of every recording. Last time I did that too. The issue was I started recording, I pressed my face to start recording, I noticed my closet wasn't closed, I got up, went to close it, came back, and by then the focus was already lost and I didn't notice. And so, well, the focus was there, but the tracking was lost. And so during the recording, the focus fucked up. I don't know how I don't notice, because the screen is right here. It's very small. It's like this small. It's right here. So I thought I would be able to notice that, but I think last week I made a more concerted effort of looking into the lens instead of the viewfinder. So that's probably why I didn't notice. So there's no easy way to figure out these issues, unfortunately, while recording. So if I want to look at the lens, I just won't be looking at the viewfinder, and I want to look at the lens. So I'm kind of like talking to you guys. But yeah, that's something I want to say sorry about. And it kind of sucks because like I have been trying to cut out segments from the episodes, and with Spill the Tearal, it's different from Shotlocked because there isn't any set segments that I cut out. It's pretty much after I'm done the episode, I kind of pick out whatever I find would be interesting as a solo video, and I upload that. And I really wanted to do the Sandland segment as a video just to talk about it, and at the time it was kind of relevant too, but I think the pretty much entirety of that segment was out of focus, and I didn't know how I would feel uploading a video that was completely out of focus. It seemed fucking weird, so I wouldn't do that. Technically, I guess I could have just like uploaded like the trailer with my audio under it. Yeah, you know what? I might do that. So we'll see. But yeah, that is something I noticed too. So because of the focus, it kind of ruined a lot of that episode. But hopefully, it wasn't too distracting because it did do pretty good. And the last thing I kind of want to mention in this housekeeping segment before we actually move on to the podcast proper is that I'm not for sure if I'll be doing this, but I'm considering possibly bringing Shotlock back concurrently with this podcast. That's something I wasn't planning. Pretty much in my head, the way this podcast is going to go is I want to do an episode weekly, and I want to do it at least for 3 months to at least see like what the growth potential of it is. So like if I do it for 3 months, it's 12 episodes, and I want to see like by the 12th episode, is there like a potential for this to keep continuing? Whether it is or isn't, I probably still want to do it, but like depending on how that does is how I'm going to prioritize this podcast, because I do this podcast in my free time when I'm not working, and sometimes I do need to work and I need to prioritize which to do, and right now I am prioritizing this podcast above pretty much everything, which is why it's coming out weekly. And so that's pretty much the plan I had, was to do it for 3 months and then see to bring Shotlock back whenever I want to. But I noticed that working on this podcast, it isn't as time consuming as I thought, because I'm not editing the podcast anymore pretty heavily. All I'm doing is during recording, if I fuck up or if I flub a line, I will just pause and then in editing I'll notice a pause and I'll just cut it out. Like I don't really have to like go through the podcast, and then after that I just watch the podcast myself to see if there's any more mistakes, and then I upload it. Like in terms of editing, it's not really heavy at all. And since the segments are something that I'm just doing as I feel like it, there's no set segments. That's something I may do with Shotlock too, and if that's the case, technically I can do Shotlocked if I have a bit more time in the day. The most of the time really goes into recording and just the pre-planning. I kind of like, search articles and, put the plan together. And so if that's something I can do with Shotlock, that might be a thing. I still think the main issue is Kingdom Hearts just isn't really, talked about right now that often. You can make theories and discussions about random aspects of Kingdom Hearts, which I do plan to do if I do bring Shotlock back. But in terms of news, it really isn't anything. Missing Link, I think, was already supposed to be a thing that keeps getting delayed. So if I do Shotlock, it'll be more discussion focused, I assume, because there isn't really news. So I'll have to think about that. But yeah, I just noticed that this podcast isn't taking too much of my time, and making videos weekly is actually easier than I thought, because I do like run other channels, and like on those channels I've done daily videos. I edit for multiple other channels too. So like I'm used to pumping like 10-15 videos out a week. And so having an extra video which doesn't have that much editing per week for the channel isn't that hard. And then doing another podcast would be pretty easy too. And the thumbnails don't take too much time comparatively, since there's one video a week too. So pretty much what I'm saying is Shotlock may come soon concurrently with this. I don't know for sure yet, because I may be getting more busier soon, but that is something I just want to let you guys know in case you were interested in that podcast, because unfortunately the last episode did very good of Shotlocked, and I just wasn't able to capitalize off that because I got really busy and kind of had to pause it there, and because there hasn't been any news since then either. So yeah, Shotlock may be coming again soon, and I think that's where we'll end the housekeeping segment. So let's get into the podcast proper of Spill the Tearal and get into what I'm playing. Now, in terms of what I've been playing only one game actually, and I'm kind of annoyed because I started playing this game last week, and based on the pace I was going, I was supposed to finish it before this podcast episode. So it would have been very cool if I could just talk about this game in its entirety from start to finish, but because I didn't finish it, I can't talk about its entirety, so I'll just talk about what I have been playing in terms of it. And the game I'm talking about is Final Fantasy IV. And I've been mentioning in my podcast episodes where I've been slowly getting more and more indoctrined into Final Fantasy, where I play Final Fantasy Crisis Core when I was a kid. I played 7 Remake. I've been playing 14 here and there, and 16 was the first game that actually made me a fan. I played 15 too, but like I didn't think it was amazing or anything. I just thought it was a game I played. And so 16 was the first game which really made me a fan. And so I noticed that they had the Pixel Remaster Collection on PSN, and it's a lot. Here it's $100, and I know you get 6 games, but like $100 is $100, and apparently it never goes on sale. So I was like, I don't know if I'll ever get it, and it ended up going on sale, which is funny. So I picked that up, and the first game I started with was Final Fantasy IV, and the reason for that is because I heard that there's 2 things. One is I heard you can just start with Final Fantasy IV, like there isn't really any issue. I don't know what the justification is, but people said like 1, 2, 3 is kind of separate from 4, 5, 6. I don't know if that's true. I feel like I read that online somewhere. But more than that, I was listening to a podcast, and a person who was a big fan of Final Fantasy 16 mentioned that the plot kind of reminded them of Final Fantasy 4. And when I heard about that, I was like, okay, I gotta try Final Fantasy 4 because I absolutely adored the plot of Final Fantasy 16. And so that's what I did. I bought the Pixel Remaster Collection and I started playing Final Fantasy 4. And the main thing that I really wanted to kind of try with this game is I realized that these days, and like kind of like what my interest in gaming is, it's a plot. Gameplay, I obviously like, the gameplay should be good, but that isn't as much of a focus as like I feel like a lot of people put into games. Like if the gameplay is even like I can see myself getting into a visual novel game which has pretty much 0 gameplay as long as the story is good. I haven't really done that, but I feel like I will get there one day. And so like with Final Fantasy IV, this would be the first story-based game that I would be playing that is so old for me. Because I was thinking about it, I'm like, I've played like pixel games in the past. I'm pretty sure I've played some Mega Man games. I think I've played like some like random ass like old pixel games. I don't even remember. Like I can't even like pull out a name like if from my head. But in terms of like a game I'm playing for the story, for the plot, I don't think I've played a game that's from the era that Final Fantasy IV came from. The oldest that I would have to say like in terms of the graphics is Trails in the Sky, which is kind of like a PSP era game where everyone's kind of chibi. That's probably like the oldest looking game that I've played that is story focused. And so I was really interested to see what my thoughts would be on Final Fantasy IV because it is so antiquated looking. And my thoughts are It works. It's really good. And honestly, I'm surprised with how good it looks. So it's obviously a pixel-based game. It's very simple top-down. But I noticed that randomly, like in certain moments, and I'm not sure if like how they did this, but their pixel animations look like too good. Like to the point where like I don't know if they actually animated it. Like I think it might have been like some kind of technology where it just converts like a video to pixels. Some examples are like some fires and torches look like very real, like they look very high frame rate. There's a scene where like they're showing a boat and kind of the water is bouncing off the boat. That straight up looks like a shot of the ocean and they just put a pixel filter over it. I don't know if that's what they did, but that's how good it looks. If they did that by hand, like huge kudos to them because like it looks really fucking good. And there's also another animation at some point in the story where like you teleport and like this red orb comes over you, and that animation of the orb looks very smooth and well done. So like, I don't know, like visually it's like impressed me in some ways more than like modern games do for some reason. So like, not only do I think like the graphics look good for like a pixel game, like they look nice, clean and sharp, but some of the animations like really impressed me even by today's standards. In terms of story, what I want to mention is what was very interesting for me is that I have no frame of reference, absolutely zero frame of reference of what the scope of the story was going to be. And what I mean is like this game is obviously, I don't even know what the original console this game was on, so I can't even say like what year it's from, but it's from a certain era where I don't know the length of game. So while I was playing this game, I'm like, if this game finished within 3 hours, like I wouldn't know, because like I don't know, like are the games from this era 3 hours? Are they 80 hours? Are they 30 hours? Like I seriously have no idea. And so like there were times when I was like 3-4 hours in where I'm like, I can see this game ending like in an hour, and like that's just might be it, because like I don't know like how big the scope of stories are in this game. And thankfully it did not end in 3 hours. It kept going, and pretty much the scope of the story kept surprising me, where like it kept going and going in a good way. Whereas I played some past games, I won't mention them right now because like I don't really remember like the plot that much, but like I played past games where I was playing and I kind of wanted it to finish, and like it kept going and I did not like it that much. Whereas Final Fantasy IV, like I kind of wanted more and it kept going, and it's pretty cool where like the world, without getting into spoilers, the world opens up at a point where like you get to explore more areas, and I thought that would be the end, but it opened up again, and I think this is at the point where I'm probably at the end game. Again, I'm not trying to like spoil it too much, but I'm in like what I think is the final area, so I think I'm about like 12 hours into the game, and I wouldn't be surprised if I'm done this game around the 15-hour mark, so that's kind of where I'm at with this game. And so yeah, the story is just bigger in scope than I thought. They're dealing with things which are more serious than I thought. There's a lot of deaths going on in the game, which is kind of comedic in a way, because again, I won't spoil it, but there are certain characters that will die, and in the cutscene there will be an emotional moment where the sprite of the character will like start flashing and then just fade away, because it's a game and like it's supposed to be a serious moment, but I couldn't help but laughing. We're like, yeah, like a homie just died, but they fucking just flashed away while the characters just watch. So I thought that was funny, and I feel like they did that on purpose. They didn't have to make them flash away, but yeah, that is something I noticed because it is, you know, an older game. And kind of related to like those deaths as I was talking about, since this is an older game, I did notice that like this is like what I assume is going to be around a 15-hour game. If this was made again, like modernized, I'm sure this game could probably stretch to like 30 or 45 hours, because they do abbreviate a lot of important moments. Like when the deaths happen, like they happen, there's like that scene of when it happened, but like so far they're usually never referenced again. Like there isn't like an arc where a character is very depressed or anything like that. It's just like it happens and like it's done. And so like it is kind of funny to see how certain moments are very abbreviated. I will talk about one moment in specificness, which is when you get a certain party member. It happened like in the first hour of the game, so like it's not that spoilery. It's pretty much the first real party member you get. Pretty much you as a main character, Cecil, go into a village and you accidentally blow up the village because the king gave you an item that accidentally blows up the village. And when you get there, it's blown up and pretty much everyone is dead except this girl, and the girl's kind of crying because her parents died, and she finds out like you killed the parents, so she kind of hates you. But then she ends up joining your party, and it's very weird because like she thinks you killed her parents, even though like it wasn't your fault, but she like is trusting of you almost immediately and is never brought up again, like whether she trusts you or not. There's no arc for that. And while it does make sense, like she probably at some point like understands that it wasn't our fault and it was like someone else's fault that it blew up, but like in a modern game 100% there would be an entire arc of her not trusting you and slowly getting to trust you, and then there would be kind of like this levity where she finally does completely trust you. But that doesn't happen in the game because again, this is an older game. I'm sure they don't really need all that development on screen, and that stuff is kind of off screen. And the one final thing I want to mention about this from the perspective of a Final Fantasy fan, kind of going backwards. So like I'm more used to like the Final Fantasy 14s and 16s of the series, where I think it's super cool seeing how the roles are used as actual roles. And of course, like in the actual timeline, Final Fantasy 4 came before Final Fantasy 14, obviously. But like from Final Fantasy 14, like I know that like Dragoon is a thing, Dark Knights are a thing, like Summoners are things, Black Mages, White Mages. I know those were like jobs you can have in the game, but I had no idea like they were actual like roles that like people had like in the world. So like it's very cool seeing like as CISO you are a Dark Knight, so you have to kind of play the rules of being a Dark Knight. There is a Dragoon in the game, there are Summoners in the game, White Mages, Black Mages, and it seems very cool because it's so different from modern games, where modern games like in JRPGs everyone can attack, everyone can use magic, everyone can heal pretty much for the most part, where in this is like, yeah, the main character CISO, he's a Dark Knight, he cannot heal, he cannot use any magic, you can only attack. He's actually honestly pretty boring to use compared to your party members, and the only ones that can heal you are usually White Mages, because there are White Mages that can use like more like healing-y type spells, and you have Black Mages, those are the only ones that can use offensive spells and they cannot heal. And there's obviously other things like there's bards and stuff which kind of heal and stuff like that, but like it's very cool seeing how the different roles are used in the story, and like the roles they have in the story affect the gameplay so much, because that's exactly what it is. If they are a White Mage in the story, that heavily affects the gameplay, to the point where like I would want certain things to happen in the story just so I can have a better party. Like there were parts of the story where like I didn't have a White Mage and I was like, fuck, I want a White Mage. Can like something in the story happen where I get a White Mage again because I really want to heal? And when that happened, I was like, cool. Not because of the story moment, because in terms of gameplay, I wanted a healer on my team. And so I think it's just really cool how they linked the gameplay and story like so heavily there. And the final thing I'll say about Final Fantasy 4, because we're already on the aspect of gameplay, is the gameplay I think is like fine. It is not my type of gameplay. I think I mentioned this in videos before, but I am a fan first and foremost of turn-based JRPGs, and then after that I like real-time combat. I think like systems that are like Final Fantasy 4, where they're like the turn-based but they have like a meter going that kind of counts when each person can go, I think that's, in my opinion, the worst system compared to the other two. Because to me, it's like it's like a turn-based system, but worse. And it's like a real-time combat system, but worse. Because that's just how I see it. Is like you have like the twitchiness of a real-time system, but you don't have the freedom of movement. So like you kind of took the negative aspect there. And you have the strategery of a turn-based system where you get to kind of wait and choose options, but you don't get to wait and choose options. You kind of rush through your thinking. So there's kind of a negative there. So like I can see why people like it, but I honestly don't like that aspect of it. I kind of wish they just had an option to like turn off the timer fully. I know there's a way you can speed up the times where you can kind of make it that the timer's always going even when you're deeper in the menus. I definitely didn't want that, but I kind of wish they just had a thing where like the timers are gone and they just attacked after you or something like that. But again, I get why it's like that, but that's definitely going to be the biggest hurdle for me to getting through these type of games, because I believe Final Fantasy 7 is the same way. I believe Chrono Trigger is the same way, which I tried to get through before, but I straight up stopped playing Chrono Trigger because of the system. But I think Final Fantasy 4 story has been more interesting for me, so I'm keeping with it. So I'm not a fan of I don't know what the system is called. I've heard people say ATB system. It might be that. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the battle system, but we'll see. Maybe it'll grow on me. But personally, I just think it's like a worse version of a normal turn-based system or a real-time system. So yeah, that's how I feel about that. But overall, really enjoying Final Fantasy 4, and I hope to finish the next few days, because like I mentioned, I should be done this game because I've been playing a few hours every day, and I think I'll be done in a few hours, but I straight up wasn't able to play for the last few days. So yeah, that's what happened. So I do expect for me to finish it before the next episode of Spill the Tearal, and then I can probably give my final thoughts in that episode. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been playing this week, and from here we can move on to the next segment, which is a game or a JRPG that I'm looking forward to coming soon. So the game I ended up choosing this week, which is funny because I talked about it on the last episode of Spill the Tearal, which is Ys X Nordics. So the trailer for it was released last week, where they kind of announced that it would be coming to the West. And I kind of reacted to the trailer during the episode, gave like the most like a bare minimum thoughts. But I did want to talk about it a little bit more on why I'm excited about it. And I could kind of talk about my history with Ys during the segment too. So pretty much the way I found Ys was I was bored one day and I was looking for games that would kind of scratch that Kingdom Hearts itch. At the time, I didn't know what type of games I liked. I'm like, I think I like JRPGs, like maybe somewhere in there. So I used to like search JRPGs all the time, and the closest thing I could find to Kingdom Hearts kind of was the Ys series. And so I figured it out. I found out. So pretty much whenever I try to find a new series, I try to find the cheapest way to get into it, so there's like less of a hurdle. And so funnily enough, I found out it's on PSP. I have a modded PSP, so I just straight up downloaded the ROM and played it that way. I know, piracy, whatever. That's how I did it. And I played E7. I ended up loving it. And as you guys probably know, like I talk about this in my Let's Play in here too, my memory for games is really bad. So I don't remember the plot at all. I don't remember a single second of the plot. I remember it being very good. I remember the twist that happened. And I remember enjoying it a lot. And the settings were very interesting of it taking place in a town. You kind of had to like go out of the town once in a while. And E7 was kind of like my foray into like Neon Falcon, because from that I kind of went to the other Ys games. I kind of went into the Trails games. And so I'm really thankful for E7 for being so good. And I tried other Ys games. I think after I beat 7, I can't remember which one it was. It might have been Oath and Fulgana. I think that's one of them. Or it might have been the Napishtim one. I know that's a game. One of them I got also on the PSP. I fell out of it quick because it mostly took place like in a forest, which like games that don't take place like in urban environments usually are kind of hard for me to get into. So I kind of fell off that. And also, I don't know if this was just like the build of the ROM that was old or what, but like the movement of the game was like very bad. Like it was a type of movement where like if you walk into a wall, instead of like sliding against it, you kind of get stuck. So it was like very scratchy and weird. Like it felt like it was like an early alpha version or something. I don't know. So like I kind of like fell out of that game quick. And I tried playing Ys Memories of Celceta, I believe is what it's called, on the Vita. I got a Vita later, straight up just for that game. I fell out of that too. I played that for a lot longer. I played that for like a few hours, but again, that mostly was taking place in like a forest. And I was like, let me just get to the first village so I can kind of get into a more interesting area. And the first village apparently ended up being like a forest village. And so I'm like, I'm kind of checked out. This environment isn't appealing to me. Literally every single room in the game was just a fucking forest, so I didn't know where I was going, and so I kind of fell off that quick too. And then we fast forward to Ys 8 when that was coming out. I loved Ys 8. I thought it was very good. I don't think it's as good as kind of like everyone makes it out to be, as like it's like the perfect game where like it kind of broke into the mainstream, but I thought it was very good. I liked the twist. The setting was kind of cool where it was on an island and there's like a lot of twists that happened with the setting too, which I won't go into. But Ys 8 was probably the first of the Ys games that I liked, which were in a more outdoorsy forest area. But I was very, very excited when Ys 9 was announced, because that looked like it was just straight up taking place in a city. And not only was it taking place in a city, it seemed like that was the game. They had like a lot more movement that was going to happen. We could run up walls and kind of like move in the air and stuff. And I played that game. I love that game. That might be my favorite after Ys 7. Again, I don't remember Ys 7. I just remember very much liking it. So based on my thoughts, I think I might have still liked Ys 7 more. But Ys 9 had like fantastic plot elements, huge twists. The environment I thought was a lot more interesting to be in the town. And so we go from that to this game, which is Ys 10. Ys 10 Nordics is a game that takes place in the past, which is interesting. And if you guys don't know how the Ys games work, pretty much the entirety of the series is about a character called Adol, and in universe he's dead. I believe he's dead. He's already gone, and pretty much like he pretty much was an adventurer. He lived up to the age of 80 something, and he passed away. And each game is just an entry of his adventure journal. That's pretty much what the pitch of the series is. And so technically you can play any game in any order because they don't really reference the other games too much, but you will always have the constant of Adol being the character and maybe a couple of characters here and there which they may reference. And so something that's been happening since I want to say Ys 7, I'm not 100% sure, is that they've been kind of been going chronologically. So Ys 7, I don't know what his age was, but let's say he was 18 in Ys 7. Then Ys 8, he was like about 20. Then Ys 9, he was about like 22. So it's been kind of going chronologically, even though they don't have to. And now with Ys 10, they're actually going back to when he was like 16 years old. So technically this is in the past and this stuff has already happened. And that's always interesting because sometimes you'll see like technology in some games that like seems more advanced than some of the games, even though it takes place in the past. So that is some things that you will notice. And that is something that I also noticed in the Ys 10 trailer where like he had like this like hologram monocle thing, and I'm not sure if I saw anything like that in the past games, but like I don't know, that could be a technology specific to the area he's in. And yeah, so in terms of specifically Ys 10, whether I'm excited for it, I've been playing like pretty much every single Ys game since Ys 7 as they come out, and Ys 10 is going to be no different. Graphics wise, I think it looks the best. I don't know if it's placebo, but I think it does look markedly better than Ys 9. And I'm kind of happy with the design of Adol too. I think the clothes he's wearing in Ys 10 look super cool. Ys 9, I wasn't a big fan. Like first of all, the normal clothes you're wearing in the game, Literally in the game, you're wearing those because you're trying to disguise and not look like adults. So you're wearing like the most fucking rinky dinky ass like normal civilian clothing, so you look stupid in that respect. And then you also have a form where you're kind of like the more powerful adult, and that I wasn't a big fan of that look too. You kind of look pretty much emo with like long hair and you're kind of black and edgy and stuff. So I wasn't a fan of that either. So I'm kind of happy that we're going back to a more traditional adult look and more of an Ys 8 look, which I noticed because from my understanding, Ys 7 in the past games, Adol usually is just wearing like armor. That's usually been his look, where he's just wearing like gray plated armor. So the fact that we're going towards a more Ys 8 look where he's still wearing like normal looking clothes, I'm a fan of, and so I'm excited for Ys 10 in that respect. And there's honestly not much more to say about it because like I mentioned, like I don't like deep diving into trailers of the games because it gets more spoilery. The only time I watched the trailer was when I watched it live during the podcast, and the main things I noticed was the graphics, which I talked about, was like the new technology, well, at least I believe is a new technology, like the monocle that he was wearing. The combat looks like normal Ys combat, which is cool. One thing I did notice when editing the last episode of the podcast is there might be combo moves, which I'm not sure were ever a thing, at least in the games I played. So the girl party member that you had, it looked like that adult does a combo move with her, and I don't know if that was ever a thing, because usually like you're just playing as one character and you get to switch to another whenever you want to use like their type advantage against enemies. And so the fact that there could be combo moves seems pretty cool. Again, this could be a thing that I'm either forgetting or was in past games that I didn't play, but that is something that I noticed in the Ys 10 trailer. But yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say about Ys 10 Nordics. It is a game I'm looking forward to, and I believe it is coming out in sometime in March. I can probably just confirm that right now. I have like a website here which says it. Okay, Ys 10 Nordics makes its way to the West, coming to PC on March 14th. Hopefully it's on consoles too. I'm not sure if it's normal for Ys games to only come on PC for launch, because I'm going to be playing this on PlayStation. So whenever it comes on the PS5, I'll play it then. But yeah, it's coming March 14th, 2024, which is pretty soon, a couple of months. So that is all I want to talk about in terms of the JRPG I'm looking forward to coming soon. And now let's move on to some JRPG news / announcements / trailers that I'm kind of into. So I have a list of some news items that I wrote, and most of them are actually sourced from Gematsu.com. So if you're interested in kind of looking at JRPG news, check them out. They have like a JRPG section, which is dope. And I wrote a lot of things here because I thought this episode was going to be shorter than usual because I didn't have too much notes, but it's actually running a lot longer than usual. So I might be skipping some of these. So I'm going to be kind of picking what I want to talk about. First thing I want to mention is there was some Sandland gameplay revealed for the Sandland game, which I talked about last episode. And I'm bringing this up specifically because last episode I mentioned how Sandland looked very much like a vehicle combat game, and I was kind of disappointed that they weren't really showing any like hand-to-hand combat. That fear's been assuaged. I watched some of the gameplay. I didn't watch the entire thing because it was kind of deep dives, and again, I don't like spoiling myself like that. And so I kind of skimmed through, and they do talk about like the main character. It's funny that I don't even know his name, but they talk about the main character like he has, like they showed him fighting. It looked very much like Dragon Ball combat, clearly, because it's kind of like Toriyama designed. But yeah, he was kind of like doing punches and kicks and fighting enemies like that. So that is something that I enjoyed seeing. So yeah, I just wanted to bring up that Sandland did have a gameplay reveal, so if you want to watch that, feel free to watch it. And that my assumption of there being no hand-to-hand combat was wrong, and there is some. So it actually makes me more excited for the game. So as more information for it comes out, I'll probably just like peep at certain things here and there, and I may pick it up. Probably not for full price. Bandai has like a horrible reputation of like overpricing the games, especially when they're not worth it. They make more like $40 games quality wise, but they charge like $80, at least here in Canada. And so I'll probably pick it up if it's ever on sale or if it's on PS Plus or something. But yeah, that was Sandland. Another thing I want to very quickly mention, I mentioned that there was a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth demo, and I also mentioned that the second part of it would be releasing later, which I believe to be the open world aspect of it. They have released it now. You can go download it. It is called The Dawn of a New Era in Junon. That update is out for the Rebirth demo, so you can check it out. I still have not played the Rebirth demo. I'm probably not going to play it until I'm done Final Fantasy VII Remake, and maybe even Crisis Core. At this point, it's clear that I'm not going to be finishing Remake before Rebirth, and so like I probably doesn't play Rebirth whenever I get to it. I'm not going to be timely with it. And so I'm still going to play the demo because I just think it's a smart way to play the demo and just transfer the save after I buy the game. That's because I can pretty much just try the game out for free. So I'll try it whenever I do get to it. But yeah, the second part of the demo is released if you are interested in that. And another thing I want to mention is that really quickly, the Nintendo Switch Partner Showcase happened. It happened today. I'm recording this on February 21st. There were some games revealed there. One of them being Monster Hunter Stories Remaster is coming out on Switch, and they also mentioned PS4 and PC. I don't know if they were already on PS4 and PC. I feel like they were, which is like where they originally were. But it's called Monster Hunter Stories Remaster, so I'm assuming it's just kind of like a more cleaned up port of it. So that is something that they announced and that's being brought, and that is technically a JRPG. So I just want to mention that very quickly. And another game is SMT5 or Shin Megami Tensei, I believe, 5 Vengeance is announced, and that's coming on PS5, Series X, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. So pretty much everything. And that's a series that I don't have too much experience in. The third game has always been in my PSN wishlist for a while because I want to try getting into it, because I know that is a JRPG a lot of people say is good, and I believe it's also made by Atlas, and I think this is a series that people call like the darker Persona. I'm not sure how true that is, so I'll see if I ever try it. I think I've been pretty clear that I don't really like dark games that much. I kind of like more like lighthearted games like Kingdom Hearts or Trails. And so I'm not sure if I will personally ever try it, but that is something that was announced, so I want to bring it up. And the last news story that I wanted to bring up is this is something that a lot of people have been waiting for, and the Elden Ring DLC called Shadow of the Erdtree was finally shown. Gameplay was shown, and it's releasing June 21st this year. They released a trailer for it, and I think I've been pretty clear with my Lords of the Fallen video. Souls games are not for me. I kind of dislike them because they're too hard for me, and I kind of don't like the aspect that they're very inaccessible for people like me who are pretty shit at games. And so I'm not going to be playing this. I tried playing like Elden Ring for like 20 hours and I kind of fell off it. But I thought it would be fun from a perspective of someone who did not complete Elden Ring. I didn't get close. I was literally still in the first area. I just played there. And for someone who's not going to pick up the game, I thought I would also react to this gameplay reveal and see like what thoughts I have on this. And if there's anything interesting I say, I'll keep the entire reaction in the episode. So that is something I want to do right now. So I'm going to pull up the gameplay trailer. Okay, so it's 3 minutes. So it's a lot longer than I thought. So I might cut around in my reaction because I don't know if I want like 3 minutes of full reactions. So again, I didn't play Elden Ring. So they're showing a guy right now in a fiery village. So I have like zero context of what any of this means. We see a dead hand hanging out of an egg. Okay, so this trailer is a lot more story-based than I thought, because I don't think of Elden Ring as a story-based game. I think of it as a more gameplay game, so this is already kind of interesting to me. That environment looks cool. That was like a cemetery or something. Okay, you're on your horse. I remember that boy. Whoa. Yeah, even though I don't like Elden Ring, I gotta give it up for its visuals. Funnily enough, I think people online said like Elden Ring doesn't have that good visuals. Like fans of the game said that, which I thought it was surprising. I thought it like looked pretty good. And also, this is technically this was originally supposed to be DLC, but I don't think it is anymore. It took 2 years, and I think I already saw they announced a collector's edition for it. So this is probably gonna be its own like 1.5 game. Holy shit! Oh my god, is that straight up just like a fire cauldron type thing? Ew! This is what I'm talking about, bro. I don't like these souls enemies. They're too much for me. Okay, scary ass fucking, oh my god, the weird ass. You know what that reminds me of? The freaking dog from Fullmetal Alchemist, bro. I don't need to say which one, you know who it is. Okay, you're finding someone cool. It's actually pretty cool to see because I didn't get far into Elden Ring, so I don't know what advanced Elden Ring combat looks like. And that looks really cool because I always rag on Elden Ring combat. I think it's like not that fun to me, but seeing more of these advanced combat is kind of cool. I wonder if some of the combat they're showing is new. Like, are there new weapons that I just don't know of? Alright, cool. Armored Warthog, what was that? Jesus. Jesus Christ, is he pulling his head out? They're showing a lot in this trailer. Especially for something that I assume to be a shorter game. If it is, I still don't know if this is a DLC or its own game. It has a collector's edition. Yeah, so that was my entire reaction to the trailer. The 3 minutes actually went by fast, which is a good thing. That means it was a good trailer. I straight up have no thoughts on anything story specific. I don't know the story. When I say I played 20 hours of Elden Ring, technically I've played 30 now, but I played 20 hours solo and I was just exploring the main world. I think there's like another area you go to after. I don't know it. I was just exploring for 20 hours. I fell off. Then I got it again on PC to play seamless co-op with my brother, and we started again, played 10 hours. We fell off. So like I don't know anything about the story or like how advanced you could get gameplay wise later in the story. So see, that's something I'll say about the trailer. Some of the combat looked cool. There's this one like ninja looking fighter who's like doing flippy dips and shit. That looked dope. Am I gonna play it? Hell no, never, unless there's like an easy mode. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of react to it and kind of give my perspective from someone who is not into these games. But I think that pretty much rounds out all the JRPG news or announcements or trailers that came out in the last week. We had a lot here. That's why I kind of bullet fired through them because I didn't want to spend too long on any of the topics. But yeah, that was the JRPG news this week. And we will move to our next segment, which is JRPGs that are releasing this week. And this week is a very slow week for JRPGs. And like I mentioned last week, I sourced these releases from a website called icicledisaster.com. And the week I'm talking about is February 18th to 24th, because I am in the middle of that. And the game that is releasing is called Yohane the Parhelion, Numazu in the Mirage. Interesting name. Now, kind of looking at it on Steam, it is releasing on February 22nd, and it is coming out on the PS5, Switch, and PC. So pretty much everywhere except Xbox. And looking at it, it looks like a card-based game, if that's something you're into. I'm kind of looking at it right now. So like a card-based combat strategy, turn-based looking anime-ass game. Now, I have a funny story with this game because usually when I have games in this list, I might not know some of them. This game, funnily enough, is actually in my PSN wish list. The thing is, I'm probably not going to get it. The reason it's in my wish list is because I remember going to PSN trying to find games to play, and I saw this game, like the picture of it, and I was like, oh, cool, it has anime cutscenes, because it was like a screenshot, and I kept going, and I realized the anime cutscene that I was looking at wasn't a cutscene, like the screenshot was actually of gameplay, and that's just something I thought was very cool with the game. Like, if you look at like a screenshot of the characters from certain angles, they look like they're from anime. Like, whatever shader they're using, I think is like some of the best I've seen where like it straight up looks like an anime. So that I just based on that, I added to my wish list. In terms of the gameplay, I'm not sure if I'll get into it. I'll have to like look at it more in depth. But I'm just kind of going through the pictures, and it looks good. It looks like fun enough. I'd have to see like if it's plot heavy, because I would kind of like the plot. It's based on Love Live Sunshine, which I think is like an anime or a mobile game, so like I probably won't be playing this, but yeah, it is something that is releasing on February 22nd, and if you're interested, look into picking it up either on PC, PS5, or Switch. And that's it. There's no other JRPG releasing this week based on Icicle Disaster. I also checked RPG site, and they have more RPGs being released this week, but I couldn't find any JRPG being released, so yeah, all we have is Yohane the Parhelion, Numazu in the Mirage. Unfortunately, if that's not your thing. And from that segment, which is very short, we all move on to our second last segment, which is some JRPG mechanic or character or theme or trope or thing that I just want to talk about. And this one is aptly themed because I got inspired to talk about this topic based on Final Fantasy IV. And what I'm going to be talking about is accommodations that are added in games to make the game easier. And the reason I'm specifically bringing up Final Fantasy IV, because like a lot of games like Final Fantasy IV, which are very old games brought to modernity, they add aspects of it to make it easier. So what I'm talking about specifically in this game is, unfortunately, I found out about this like pretty late into the game. If I knew about it early in the game might have been easier for me now. And that is that if you go into the settings, they have a boost settings menu, and if you go in that, you can boost your experience gained by 4, and you can boost your gil gained by 4. Gil is like the money in Final Fantasy, if you didn't know. And so I originally wasn't using it, and even when I found out about the options, I didn't really plan to use it because I was kind of going fine in the game. It was kind of hard. I was dying here and there, but pretty much the time I started using it was when I got to a point where like I usually was upgrading my armor routinely, but I got to the point where there's this armor that I needed, like this torso, and it was like way too fucking expensive. Like, I'm talking about like sometimes there are some armors that I can't afford and I would come back for it, but it was like 5-6x of my total money just for the torso, and I was like, that's fucking bullshit. So I turned on 4 times gil then, and soon after I also turned on 4 times experience. And the reason is because the way I'm playing is they actually have a feature, the kind of adding on to this topic, where you can turn off random encounters in this game. And so sometimes when I was in a dungeon and I didn't want to fight anyone, I would turn it off and kind of get all the chests and then turn it back on to fight some people. But it was getting to the point where like I didn't want to fight people anymore, like I mentioned already previously in this podcast, where I'm not a fan of the battle system too much, and so if I didn't have to do it, I liked it better. And I was pretty much playing the game where I would turn off the encounters for a while, turn it back on so I can still level up, turn it off, etc. And once I found out about the 4 times experience, I was like, you know what, let me just put that on, and that can even help me even more, where I would just do a battle once in a while and then I would turn it off the entire time and turn it on whenever I needed a battle. And I'm at this point where like I'm getting enough experience from like boss fights and like mandatory battles where I don't even have to turn on the random encounters anymore, where I'm strong enough to kind of still do the boss fights, but I don't have to do random encounters. So like that's kind of like perfect for me because I'm not wasting time with random encounters, and the game isn't so easy where I'm like one blitzing anyone. It's far from that. Honestly, originally I was kind of cheesed because I had the 4 times XP on, but I was still dying on story fights because they were too hard for me, and so I had to like grind for 20 minutes on random enemies, the 4 times XP, go back. It was still really fucking hard, but I was able to get through it, and I'm at this point where I've gotten enough XP from bosses where it's cool now. So that is a feature I really like, and I really wish features like this were like more available in games that aren't like remasters or anything. Like this is in this game only because this is such an aged game and they're bringing that feature to make it easier to play. But honestly, they can add this in modern games too. Is like, yeah, if I kind of want to blitz through a JRPG that I'm kind of interested in, say I'm playing a JRPG and like it's kind of like a 6 out of 10 for me, but I still want to get through the story, yeah, let me just like increase the XP and just let me get through it faster, because why not? Especially if it's a single player game, it doesn't affect anyone, so why not do that? This is also my number one argument why I think Souls games really fucking should have some kind of difficulty setting or some accessibility options like this to make it easier. Like if Souls games had like, yeah, you get 5 times the amount of souls, yeah, I would like that. It literally doesn't affect how you play it. If you want to have a hard time, go ahead. But if, as someone who just wants to get through the game faster and I do not give a fuck about the challenging aspect, it would be nice to have that, in my opinion. And kind of some other forms of this mechanic where they make the game easier that I kind of want to rattle off. I won't talk about this in detail, but the retry but easier mechanic, I talked about that in episode 1 of Spill the Tearal. I also have a whole video on it where you can retry battles, but it's slightly easier. I think that's a genius mechanic which every game really should have. I like the way that Final Fantasy 16 had this mechanic where like I didn't personally use it, but they straight up had items that buff you. So I think there was an item that I can't remember the specific items, but it's something like if you put this item on, you take less damage, or you put this item on and it auto dodges, things like that, where if you put the item on, the game is easier. I personally didn't put it on because I didn't want to waste the item slot, and so like I didn't end up using it. But thankfully Final Fantasy 16 I think was like the perfect difficulty for me, where I had like no problem getting through it, and I straight up wasn't even dying in that game until like end game. So it was really good in that aspect too. And the last thing I want to mention is this doesn't specifically make it easier, but I think it is kind of a mechanic. I don't know if it's an accessibility mechanic, but it's a mechanic that I've seen added to the Trails games whenever like they're remade or like they're newer. And that mechanic is the speed up function of Trails games. If you don't know that what I'm talking about, there's a mechanic, for example, the Trails of Cold Steel games. If you press, I think it's either L2 or R2, the game starts being played in ×4 speed, which sounds insane, but like it's so fucking useful. And like I love that you can use it whenever you want. And so like I've gotten so used to it in Trails games, which I hope they keep having in Trails games. I think they do. I think I haven't played Reverie in a while, Trails Reverie, and I think they have it in that too. But pretty much like every battle I play is in ×4 speed. It's just easier. It's turn-based, so I just play ×4 speed. I sometimes keep it off when it's kind of like an important story-based battle. I'll just keep it off there just to be in the moment more. But yeah, if it's a random encounter, that shit's in ×4 speed. One of the places I use it the most, and it's kind of like fucked me up in terms of playing normal games now, because I notice it even more in normal games, is usually when a cutscene starts, cutscenes very often have an establishing shot. So for example, if a cutscene starts, it fades in and then it's showing like a location. It's kind of stuck on that shot for 2 seconds, and then it slowly pans downwards to the players, and then it zooms in, and then 20 seconds later the characters start talking. I fucking hate that. I know why they do it, obviously, because it's more cinematic that way. But whenever that type of shot happened in a Trails game, I ×4'd it, and that scene went a lot faster, and then I ×4'd it, and then I watched the cutscene in normal speed. And I'm noticing this a lot when I'm playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, where they have so many fucking pauses in the cutscenes, where they have establishing shots, or someone will talk and then pause for literally 7 seconds sometimes. I know, because I'm editing my Let's Play, and they pause so long where like I wish I can just like speed it up while I'm playing, but obviously you can't. So that feature is also something I wish would make it to more games, because I kind of want to just control my speeds in games more often. And it's something that I'm surprised isn't in Final Fantasy IV. I thought like a game like that would have a speed up option, especially because it's older. But them being able to turn off encounters is enough for me. So hopefully that speed option is something that comes more too. So yeah, that's pretty much all I want to talk about. Kind of accessibility options or mechanics that make the game easier or quicker to get through, I think is pretty useful, and something I would like to see more in future JRPGs. And like always, we will be closing this podcast out with the last segment, which is my casual JRPG top list, which is pretty much me giving a top list that's JRPG related, but it's done casually. I didn't think too hard about it. I'm going to be revealing the entire list kind of immediately and then going briefly to the points that I want to talk about. This week, the top list is the top 3 JRPG bosses. And again, it's a casual list. So like I literally thought about this for all of 30 seconds. Are there more bosses that I think are better than these 3? Maybe. I don't know. I just couldn't think of it on the spot. So I have 3 bosses here, and I'll try to think of an order kind of on the fly. But pretty much the bosses are number 3, Final Fantasy VII Remake Sephiroth. Number 2, Kingdom Hearts 2 Sephiroth, funnily enough. And number 1, Final Fantasy 16 Titan. So those are the 3 bosses that I want to put. Funnily enough, with the Sephiroths, they are in my top list for very similar reasons. In terms of Final Fantasy VII, let me start with Kingdom Hearts 2 Sephiroth. So I played that when I was a kid, and straight up, the memories I have when I was playing that as a kid is just like, it was a blur. Like the battle was so fast. Like I just had to fucking be on my toes, beat him. It took so long to beat him. And it's kind of funny looking back at it now, because when I played it at the time, it was beginner mode, and I'm able to beat him in critical mode like pretty easily these days. And so like I remember the battle just being an insane blur. It was very quick. It was like the hardest thing I had ever fought at that age, and like it felt so cinematic in a way, even though it really isn't a cinematic fight. With the movie starts with at the start where you kind of have to press triangle and react, that meteor move he does, that move where he rises in the air and just takes away all your life. There were just so many cool moments in the fight that I really appreciated. And what's funny is the Sephiroth battle in Final Fantasy VII Remake, I have the exact same vibes of it. But what makes it extra funny is I don't remember the fight at all. Because if you've been watching my Let's Play, I've mentioned many times in the Let's Play is I'm replaying the game, but I don't remember the original playthrough at all for whatever reason. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I just wasn't paying attention when I first played the game. But like, there's so many key moments that I don't remember of the game. And Sephiroth's fight in Final Fantasy VII Remake is one of those things where I remember my feeling of it. I remember it being really fucking intense, very fast paced. Literally all I remember is an image of a blur of colors. That's all I remember. Because I think there was an environment where there's kind of like floating colors around you and you're kind of in space or some shit, I think. That's all I remember. I never went back to watch a gameplay of it either. And so like I'm kind of excited to get back to it in my Let's Play to see like what that fight was and why I was so hyped on it. But I just thought it was funny that it's the same person, like I'm fighting Sephiroth in this and in Kingdom Hearts 2, and I had the exact same vibes of it just being a very quick, fast blur. If anyone's ever played Beat Saber on Expert, it kind of gives me the same vibes of that. If you're playing Beat Saber on Expert, you're just fucking going insane, trying to just barely survive. That's how I remember the Sephiroth fights in Kingdom Hearts 2 and Final Fantasy VII Remake, where like it just felt like I was always surviving by the skin of my teeth, and I was just like really trying hard to not die. And the experience was very memorable for me, obviously, because I don't really remember the plot of 7 Remake, but I remember the boss fight. So that's kind of what I want to mention about the Sephiroth fights for Kingdom Hearts 2 and 7 Remake. And lastly, I want to talk about the Titan fight in Final Fantasy 16. The Titan fight is like such a good fight to me. It's the most cinematic fight I've ever experienced. The fact that you're using a Titan form of yourself and not Clive himself, and it works so well still. The fact that it's so fucking long. I think that the fight's entirety from human Clive to the end is probably like 30, maybe even 40 minutes. I'm not so sure. And so that fight, I just think, is a fantastic fight. And it's I'm kind of fighting of maybe not talking about it too much because I kind of want to release a video about it. I have this video in the works that I kind of recorded a long time ago, but I've never gotten out, which I might be releasing, which is all about this fight, like a kind of in-depth entirety of the fight and kind of going through it. And so yeah, all I want to mention is it's cinematic. It has a lot of quick time events, which I'm a fan of. I know a lot of people don't like quick time events, but if you've experienced the quick time events in Kingdom Hearts games, you know how fucking cool they can be. I like that you get to use Ifrit. I like that you get to have different type of mechanics. There's like a part where you're kind of doing a shooting mechanic game in it, which is really cool. And the fact that like you just see such a large scope of the fight and it's cinematic the entire way through, and it's very fucking anime. The fight is so anime with what you do and how you get to kind of beat up Titan. But yeah, that's all I'll go into it. I don't want to go too in depth with this fight. Again, this will be a casual top list where I just quickly go through my options. But yes, number 3 is 7 Remake Sephiroth, number 2 is Kingdom Hearts 2 Sephiroth, and number 1 is Final Fantasy 16's Titan. And that will do it for this week's podcast. What's funny is, I swear to God, like when I wrote my notes for this episode, I was like, this is going to be shorter than usual. My podcast episodes, I expect to be 30 to 40 minutes, but I thought this was going to be shorter than usual, at least from how long I recorded. It's been about 56 minutes. That's insane. It's a lot longer than I thought. I didn't think an episode could be this long, especially because there weren't that much JRPGs releasing. So I guess like maybe my Final Fantasy IV talk and the JRPG news covered it pretty well. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode of Spill the Tearal. I almost forgot the name of the podcast. Hopefully I will see you next week for episode 4. If you guys have any opinions on anything I talked about, please let me know down in the comments below. I would love to have your guys' thoughts on the top list I do. So if you guys have a top JRPG boss that you want to talk about, let me know down below. I read every comment. I try to reply to any comment which is replyable. Remember to like the episode. That helps a ton on YouTube. Remember to subscribe if you're new. And if you guys want to check out this podcast on audio services, it is on Spotify. It is on Anchor. There is an RSS feed. I'm still in the process of getting onto other platforms, so that'll happen, and if it does, it'll be in the description. But yeah, thank you guys for watching or listening, and I will see you guys next time.